Diversity, it might be what's holding your team back, and you may not know it yet and may not know how to solve it. For that reason, I'm really excited to tell you that Data Futurology has established a partnership with She Loves Data, and we're doing a series dedicated on improving diversity in your organization, in your teams, in your workplace, so you can get the most value out of your teams, out of your data, and create products that the market really wants. Tune in every week as we speak with executives and female leaders from all over the world on how they have targeted and improved the diversity on their teams, and you can find out what we can learn from them.
We are thrilled as a She Loves Data to be part of the Futurology podcast, where we will showcase some female leaders, but the leaders from tech industry, and we will be talking about strategies, about data, about biases, and about diversity. Join us.
I wanted to say a big thank you to our sponsors. One of our sponsors is Shine Solutions Group. Shine Solution Group is a technology consultancy that has been empowering their enterprise and government partners with pragmatic technology solutions for over 20 years. Learn more at shinesolutions.com. Also, a big thank you to SAS, giving you the power to know. Through innovative software and services, SAS empowers and inspires data advocates around the world to transform data into intelligence. Committed to diversity, did you know about the Women in Analytics Network that they have? It's a SAS-sponsored networking program aimed to strengthen diversity in the analytics field. Check it out in the show notes below. They're definitely committed to it as they're helping us with this diversity series too. I also would like to tell you about Growing Data. Growing Data is a consultancy that helps organizations unlock the full potential of their data. They work with some of Australia's most successful organizations from finance. They work with people like ANZ Bank, through to biotechnology, companies like CSL, and all the way to construction, working with companies like Metrocon. They help these and many more companies solve their most challenging data-related problems in analytics, machine learning, data engineering, and data governance. While I was at ANZ Bank, I got the pleasure to work with the team at Growing Data, and I can tell you for a fact they are top-notch. I highly recommend Growing Data. Find out more at growingdata.com.au. Also, a big thank you to Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading data specialist recruitment business. They are experts in recruitment strategy and delivery for analytics and data teams. They are the go-to recruitment business for all your data roles in Australia, and they can help both with permanent hires and short-term project-focused data resources. I've used Talent Insights in the past, and I've always found them fantastic to work with. Visit them at talentinsights.com.au. Hi, and welcome to Data Futurology. My name is Felipe Flores. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are continuing our special series called She Leads. We're doing this in partnership with She Loves Data. We're very excited to collaborate with this great organization on a really important topic to the industry, really important area for us to discuss within data, which is diversity and how we can improve it, what are the different aspects of it, and how we can make for better leaders. And today, my co-host for today is Patricia Mulles. She's the head of partnerships at She Loves Data. How are you doing, Pat?
I'm good. And as always, I'm happy to be in this fantastic series representing She Loves Data. And I'm so glad to be here today in this conversation with fellow data-driven marketers.
Amazing. Marketing is the name of the game today. Data-driven marketing, AI-driven marketing, and we've got two very special guests, which we're very, very excited about. First, we got Vid from Coca-Cola. He's the APAC Marketing Technology Director at the Coca-Cola company. Vid, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good. Very good Friday, so happy to be here.
Oh, mate, we're very excited. And also very excited to speak with Pavel Bulowski. Mate, you are the CMO at Meiro, obviously a co-founder at She Loves Data, but today I'm very keen to pick your brains from a Meiro perspective, if that works for you. How are you doing today?
Good morning from Prague again, and it's exciting and interesting to be sitting on the other side of the table for once, So looking forward to this.
And thanks for the early start. We really appreciate it. So I wanted to kick us off by asking you both, and Vid, maybe we can start with you. I wanted to ask you both about your origin story. Give us an overview of your career background and how you were pulled into this world of marketing technologies and data-driven marketing, and how you got to where you are today. I'll ask you, Vid, first.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure if this is as exciting as an X-Men origin story, but hey, I started as a pure front-end engineer. I love user experiences. I still do, and in my free time, I still try to dabble with some of the front-end technologies, React and Node, and doing some little experiments. But that's where I started. About 12 years ago, and that love for user experiences sort of led me into product management roles, and that's the initial journey where I got into AdTech. So I was part of Tremor Video, was one of the few companies which also sort of brought the supply side and the demand side together for a while before it got split into a couple of different versions. So I was part of the demand side platform team there. So started as a front-end engineer, gone on to engineering ranks, product management. We built one of the first self-service DSP platforms back then, which was very much the buzzword back then. So that's where my AdTech journey really started to kick on. I've always been a fan of how AdTech really runs the internet economy, right? I mean, now more than ever, it's actually even more critical how we run internet in a very consumer privacy-safe manner and still, make it free is something that's very close to my heart, and have been continuing my journey ever since there, from DSP company to martech company, and now to Coke. In Coke for close to 2 years, and enjoying so far.
That's incredible. I'm very keen to pick your brain around that whole space, and definitely marketing technologies and how the two worlds converge. So thank you so much. And Pavel, how about you? What's your origin story? How did you get here today?
Well, I think the only common thread in my entire story is a long string of saying yes to things I know little about, and that got me where I am today. So I've started in food and beverage industry. Actually, I've got my family background is in that. I'm actually trained sommelier. So if you want a fun fact, that's that.
Wow,
so
nice.
Know a bit about my wine. From there, media, hospitality, early e-commerce. In Europe, and then eventually onto marketing and analytics, and that kind of led the way through consulting with Jana starting the company 5 years ago, to Meiro eventually 3.5 years ago, which is now seems forever, but it's exciting, and it's really a culmination. And one thing I like about it is how we obviously work with clients from different industries, so anything from banking to telco, FMCG, retail, and I think often when I work with people on my team who kind of had that like one very linear trajectory in their career, they are good at what they do, but they don't see a bigger picture. And I think if that's one thing that I do, that's maybe what I can bring to the table. So ability to kind of synthesize across the board a little bit more.
Well, you both have very interesting journeys for sure. I'd like to direct the next question at Vid. For the benefit of those not quite familiar with the role, can you please describe to us what a head of marketing technology does, and how do you interact with the other heads like chief data officer, chief marketing officer, chief information officer?
This is a great question. In a different organization, what I've seen is that this role can be located in different locations. Right? I mean, it could be under marketing, it could be under digital or data, or it could be under CIOs too. Right? So in Coke, particularly, I'm rolling up under the CIO bucket. But what I personally feel is this role is a bridge between CIOs, CMOs, CDOs, and all of those core functions that deal with marketing, right? What I personally feel is that there is a definite knowledge gap, right? I mean, we can't expect all of these, functions to know everything about, how the fundamental layer that connects each of these buckets to really come through, right? And that, to me, is the central role of anybody who heads out in the domain of marketing technology. So regardless of where this role sits, I see this particular person has to think about, going across to marketing or digital or technology to bridge the gaps and really come up with both the strategy and the execution of the angles, right? So I think that, in a sense, is what the role entails. The definition of the structure will vary across companies, but the purpose is to really bridge the knowledge gap across these various departments.
So it's not quite different from the newer roles they have, like a data translator, where they also bridge the gap between the business stakeholders and the tech and what they call the math men. So
Exactly. Yeah. I see that as the same thing. It's a glorified translator. Let's put it that way.
I'm sure it's very critical.
Yeah, and to make it a bit more real, like to take examples, right? So we are so into the era where Apple is talking about killing IDFAs or Google is trying to kill third-party cookies. It's not enough to just say that, right? I mean, I can't go to my marketing community or the CMO and say, hey, you know what, IDFA is going up. He's like, what does that mean, right? To translate that kind of technology pieces to real marketing impacts. Hey, if you want to have direct consumer relationships, that's going to be heavily impacted. That is the kind of translations that need to happen. And honestly, so it's not as straightforward in different domains, but it's one of the key roles for this particular function.
Thank you.
Man, that is fantastic. And I wanted to ask you both. I'll ask maybe Pavel first about the rise of importance of data within marketing. It feels like in the last few years there's been an increased focus on what data can do within marketing and how it can fuel data-driven marketing. And I don't know if that's trying to balance the scales between the art and science part of marketing, or whether data is taking over completely. Do you have any views? How have you found the journey so far? I'll ask Pavel first.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I think it's a bit of a pendulum swing in a way, where like you said, if you look at marketing and if you go quite a bit back, not just 6 months or 3 or 4 quarters, marketing has been kind of the domain of communications, and I think it's impossible not to reference the Mad Men. It's been super popular TV show, right? Everyone's watched that. So if you kind of look at that, it's always been the communication, the creatives. That's been the discipline of marketing. But now, when you look at what happened in last few years, it's been all about AI, which is mostly written in PowerPoint, in when it comes to marketing, to be perfectly honest. But there's been a lot of talk of data, and it's clearly because there are a lot of different systems that marketers are managing and this technology management would traditionally have been domain of IT. And I suppose this is part of a kind of a WIDS entity as well here. As a marketing technology manager is essentially it's either a bridge to IT or a shadow IT function within the marketing, because marketers traditionally, if you think of the traditional communication people, they would not have that skill set of management of technology, data security, data warehousing, and you kind of see this data sitting in all sorts of pockets within those respective tools that marketers have acquired. And if you look at some of the research, it varies anywhere from the kind of the highlights show that like marketers now manage more than 30 to 100 applications within enterprise, and all of it produces some kind of data. So I think it's inevitable, but I also think it's a bit of a blind side, because you can't drive business by data. It's I think honestly that's a bit of a misconception. Business has to be driven by business, right? You have to have a business objective. So in my mind, it's a business driven and informed by data, but not data driven on its own. I think there is this, like, when people put it out into without a context into the open, it often feels like there's a bunch of data scientists who are able to find this whole new this whole new insights and directions for the company, and it's not necessarily so straightforward, because often, again, data analysts don't have the business context, and the best ones do, but that's rare breed, as we know, right? So I think that's a bit of a pendulum swing towards the data. Has been emphasis on that, and I think now over the next couple of years, it's going to come kind of back into the middle, and we're going to hear more of a kind of a business reasoning in marketing, again, supported by data, of course.
Man, I love it. I love the informed by data instead of driven by data. That's great. Vid, have you found the same? Do you think that do you feel like it's being a pendulum swing, or is the art and science getting more into balance within the marketing discipline? How is it from your perspective?
I think I might have a slight variation on that, maybe a slight discipline. I feel like the pendulum swings all the time, but decisively, I think it's getting closer to a balance where there's more science now, enabled by the digital media, right? And all the possible technologies, including the one from Pavel, right? CDPs is one of the new buzzwords, right? I think all of this is possible in the recent eras because of the advancement in technology. When we were in a completely different background a few years ago, way not possible, right? But this pendulum will keep swinging, but it's easy to see why the pendulum swings towards science, but it's also important to see why it goes away from science at sometimes, right? One of the most common conversations is around, are we over-investing? Are we not seeing the connect to the actual ROIs? That's one of my day in, day out pressures, right? I mean, I'm just bringing every damn technology into the piece. I'm not given that high a budget, and I can't, take it out without getting enough ROI. So to me, there's always a necessity to prove the effectiveness of marketing, but it's also going to be kept in check by the need to provide ROI. So I guess that is a supplement to the pendulum, which keeps swinging this way. Yeah.
Nice one.
I can relate to that challenge of always proving value in terms of ROI, and in fact the CEO of Oracle, I think, termed this as the marketing proof gap, right? So a related question is, our marketing stacks, all these automation and AI platforms, there are now 8,000 of them, right? How do you? It's so honestly so difficult to keep up. Which platforms are worth our attention and our money, really, in your opinion? What are the key trends?
I think from my point of view, it's very hard to say which platform right now, right? I mean, the concept has been evolving. One thing I've learned from my time in the industry, there is no one constant company that can provide everything. The closest that I've seen any company doing well in the entire Lumascape is possibly Trade Desk, right? I mean, but beyond all of that, I think the importance is to know at any one point for any company, per se, there are going to be multiple challenges. Our biggest problem is also the proof gap, right? I mean, there are multiple challenges. So, is our touch point, let's say a physical touch point, right? A shelf in a traditional store. Is it having more impact than a Facebook impression that people scroll down very quickly? I mean, there are definite point of views there, but can we say it absolutely objectively? That's one of the things that we are working on internally. So how do we look at the concept of ROI across channels and really take it through? So to be really honest, it is, the gap exists, but every marketer, who's thinking in this particular arena is pushing towards the dimension of how do we really reduce the gap, right? How do we prove the connection between, what we do as a marketing activity, whether it's, actual, packages from Coca-Cola, or, media activity, or owned properties, or earned media, or shared media, whatever that is. What is the value of it, right? We are trying to improve, more outcomes, but it's difficult. Some media is great. Digital gives us a lot of info, and some are not so great. In those cases, we are trying to come up with some proxies to try to get around it for now. But as time goes, I expect a definite, progress in terms of how we do this better and better. And when we are more clear on ROIs, the right technologies will follow the conversation, because it's not the other way around. If the ROI needs me to look at audiences in multiple screens, I'm going to look at the right technologies in those. If I go at it from a technology base to, the outcomes, it's going to come up with the wrong answers, and it'll be very difficult to convince the company to go in a different direction. So the focus on ROI and outcomes is really important to look at the vast set of options that we always have.
Absolutely. And according to some studies that I've read, the value of martech now, right, actually is proving itself to be really indispensable in tracking customer experience and competitive research, really. It may, like you said, it may take time to have that attribution model that directly points to an ROI. But at this point, it's difficult, as you said. Pavel, any thoughts on this?
I don't know where to start, to be honest. I think ROI is honestly one big challenge here for sure. Massively induced by the walled garden in marketing. Like, you've got the advertising platforms, then they let you use the data inside of them, but they don't let you take the data outside of it. And the synthesis of multiple walled gardens. Yeah. Virtually impossible. So I think that's one challenge. I think second kind of a sub challenge of the ROI formula, I think is the investments into the technology itself. I think we've seen marketers obviously increasingly investing into technology over last few years, and a lot of it is, to be honest, an equalizer. Like, if you think of, I would kind of like to think of things as a strategic purchases, right? Are these things making you stand out in the marketplace? Are they adding a capability that you have and that sets you apart from a competition? If you buy the same DMP that's touching in the same data set as your competitor is, you're not stepping aside, you're catching up. And there's a few kind of problems I've got philosophically with that. The other thing I think, as this landscape grows, and I every year I watch that slide crowded with marketing vendors, and I think it was about 3-4 years ago where you could, there was a last year where you could make out the logos. Now you cannot anymore.
Yeah.
It's way too big. It's 9,000 plus vendors in there.
So
that's insane. Yeah. And I think the big challenge that this comes with is obviously any type of a harmonization of these platforms. So interconnectedness, which isn't there, and even more point in case are the big platforms. Like, if you look at the big marketing cloud, no need to name names here. It's the blue ones and the yellow ones, or whichever, But it's all effectively a bunch of in-house built tools, bunch of purchase tools, and they don't connect very well, even with themselves, and have sort of an agenda not to really connect very well with the rest of the world. So they kind of lock you in as a company a little bit more. So how the question is how you assemble your technology stacks is a big one, and that's exactly the role of kind of marketing technologies that's coming to play here. So I think that's fascinating, and I think. the bigger picture here for me, the question is how are these investments tactical and how are they strategical? Because if you kind of look at what's happening in a world, is eventually the world is going to be one connected marketplace. Like at the point we are in an era where you can buy an MRI machine on Alibaba and have it shipped to your house next day, basically, yeah. Right? Like that's seriously a thing. And when that's a thing, meaning everything, including these super heavy scientific machines, are becoming an absolute commodity. So what is going to be setting brands aside from the rest of the competition is going to be the customer experience. And you don't get great customer experience by sending me 2 emails, every 2 days. Like it's and especially if I don't open them, right? Like, and that's happening. We still see that. So I would like to kind of see it as an investment into the future of the brands and of the company, and that's a difficult one to justify in any sense, because it's obviously flashier PR to do AI stuff and for banks to invest into fintech that's never really going to see it into production, but it makes it better headlines than investing into customer experience, because customer experience is something that's very, very hard to put ROI on in a similar way like the technology or the marketing spends, right? So it's not, there's not a straightforward calculation. So that's super broad topic, Pat, but that's basically where I see few pain points.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of pain points and lots of improvements that can be done across the value chain and all the customer contact points. And I wanted to ask you guys, and I might start with you, Vid. I wanted to ask you about the changes that have come out of the pandemic. So with COVID, a lot more people were going, or I guess were forced, to be more online. And how has that changed the approaches that you guys have taken as a company, or what have you seen in the marketplace, in the industry and in the market, and where do you see these changes going over time?
Definitely, I think the pandemic has been one of the best catalysts for digital transformation. Unfortunately, there are other major effects, but this was one possible good side effect of the whole pandemic. I say good because what we thought as something will be a few years down the line, kind of an investment, has been given more credibility and accounted for in terms of the roadmap right away. And this is not just happening in Coke. I see this everywhere. Direct to commerce, direct to consumers commerce. It's there. I mean, a while ago, people weren't so used to the concept of QR codes. Now you say everywhere, people are so familiar with QR codes. Really opens up the agendas a lot more. I mean, the consumer behavior patterns have changed significantly. And I think that's a very interesting opportunity by itself. And so from a pure, D2C point of view and, business model patterns, I think there's a lot of interesting changes that are coming up. But of course, if you look at the other dimension that Pavel was also trying to get to, which was if the big platforms get a lot more traction through these, what happens to the open internet? To me personally, on that, COVID was a much smaller impact, but the changes before it, the cookie changes and the IDFA changes, had a much larger impact on that direction. My thinking is, basically, the open internet has a reason to survive. And we all, whether it is large enterprises like Coca-Cola, other brands, other publishers, we all owe it to the open internet to really have the balance. If the balance goes away, there are really difficult circumstances that will come up in the long run. And that is something that we owe it to ourselves and to the industry to really collaborate. Our biggest problems have been that we don't collaborate, and that's why the big walled gardens do what they do. So that's the other thing that we need to be watchful, coupled with the COVID situation and the prior legislations and rule changes within the browsers and everything. This is something that we need to really focus on. So,
yeah, no, that makes total sense. How about from your perspective, Pavel? How did you see the changes that are happening online, possible effects of the pandemic, and maybe if you have any views on cultivating first or data within the organization, getting together first party, second party, third party data. That is, I guess, a bit of a follow-on from your previous discussion. But how are you seeing the changes that are happening online and what the pandemic brought?
Yeah, look, I think super dramatic. It's been the single most, strongest push towards any type of digitization that we have seen so far. There's been the great. I really love Marketunist, so I'm sure you guys know the kind of the usually like one page cartoon, and he's done like a joke on that. Who's been the biggest, who's been the C-level driving the digital transformation this year, and it's been COVID, right? So I think that's very, very true and very spot on. So obviously a big push for companies to go sort of online, hedge the risk of not necessarily seeing being affected by a retail shutting down in when there's a complete lockdown in countries, which I think we still we'll see in near future still a lot of that. So I think it's kind of a proofing against that is a big one. I think generally, not related to the pandemic situation, a big drive towards transparency on how consumer data is being used. Certainly driven by legal frameworks like GDPR, which I think is in future the de facto standard for the world, or where a lot of the legislations are being modeled on locally, which is obviously very, very comprehensive. And I think that's, as always, Europe kind of drives the consumer protection effort in that sense. And I think that's really, really healthy. I think brands need to be straightforward and communicating with their brands. I think we are with the consumers, how they are using their data. I think there's going to be a lot less of the trading third party data, not as a trend. I think there will be a lot of exchanging data between brands, but there's going to be a lot less of this kind of like the long tail of reselling collection from shady apps that are free but obviously never free. So I think that's going to go away. There's going to be a big platform push on that as well, which is certainly driven by some monetary rewards for the platforms that are driving this as well. You can't really look away from that, but nonetheless, I think this is going to be leading to more transparency for consumers, and especially in the sense that the consumers on the internet are maturing in a way. Like we've seen big steep adoption curve. You have now 4.5 billion people on the internet, or a little bit more than that. I think there's been maturity in a curve in the usage as well, and consumers are going to be requiring a transparent behavior from the brands they are working with. So I think this is going to be how brands are managing their data, how they are collecting it, what they are deriving from it, how they are using it is going to need to be communicated a lot more clearly, and there's going to be organizational focus on that. I think 100% that's my big bet, as something we will be hearing about a lot more in the upcoming years.
Awesome. We're really living in interesting times, not just, also in marketing, actually. I'd like to pick up on both your points that you mentioned earlier. Vid, you touched on the open internet and the need, I suppose, for the entire martech ecosystem to be more diverse. Is the industry doing anything to address this as a whole, as an ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think the reality is that there are a lot of efforts, right? So we are part of the IAB organization too, the worldwide organization. So, and there are a lot of industry efforts, whether it's Project Rearc, and our Trade Desk Unified ID, there are a lot of equalizer solutions coming out in the open. My biggest fear is that, every player thinks for their own way and they don't collaborate. And ultimately, solutions from a larger player gets the most widest, application. And that's really the concern. I think there are a lot of great ideas coming up through the pipelines. I definitely, we've been a huge proponent of integrating to all those solutions that come up. All the Asia Pacific systems that we run through our consumer data platforms are connected to Trade Desk Unified ID. We did connect to DigiTrust from IAB until it was shut down. We are keeping an open mind. Whatever new efforts come out, we want to be fully supportive of that. We want to bring the ecosystem up. With all of this, it's really the small publishers that stand to lose a lot, right? If pricing leverages go up for Google, Facebook, it's going to have a drastic impact on the smaller guys. And that's where, a lot of collaboration is needed. I don't think it's going to be a dearth of initiatives. I think there's going to be a lot of initiatives coming from the wider, open internet. It's a matter of, can everybody rally around one? And more importantly, will it work for the consumers, right? I've always feel the industry focuses a lot more on themselves. Even take the case of, the consent framework from GDPR, right? I feel very conflicted with it. The consumer fatigue is very apparent. I don't think I read anything. I just click accept because it's too, disturbing for me to see that pop up, and I had to get rid of it, right? I don't really read any of it. Too much responsibility is given to the consumers, and I feel the industry really needs to shake its thinking in terms of not just about themselves. When we come up with solutions, does it work well for the consumers? Does it put consumers at the center of the solution? That, to me, is going to be the real game changer, right? Until we really do that, we will need the forced hand of legislations. The fact that legislations have to come to keep us in check is the real shame, right? I think we as an industry, we should have reacted much earlier. And if not earlier, at least now, I think that's where we need to do better. How do you really make the experience better? Because everything else that we're doing is reactionary. Until now, I think the proactive element about caring about consumers, unfortunately, is not shining well through to the consumers. Like all these efforts that we talk about, I think it's only us talking in our own echo chambers. I think, honestly, that's where the biggest shift needs to happen. When that happens, yes, I think the economy of internet will survive and go, leaps and bounds into the future directions.
Yeah, well, there's an additional challenge if legislation comes into play, because every country, as you know, has its own set of legislative rules that are dictated often by socioeconomic forces, political forces even. So it is another one of those, challenging issues.
We have different things to do in China. We have different things to do in many other places. So it's really
exactly. Since you mentioned China, actually, I'd like to touch on that. They are saying that AI is actually forking into the Eastern or China-based AI and the West, which is led by the US. What are your thoughts on this? And how do we see a future with such forking happening? It will definitely affect the way technologies that have AI in them are developed.
I'll give you a very crisp answer. I don't think it should fork. I think innovation, no innovation in the history of mankind grown because it was forked into two different versions for two different geolocations, right? So I think sharing both from the outside world to China and from China to other economies is very important. I work with the Chinese group here very much, and fundamentally there are technological hurdles that we have to go through, but what next is the same principle. I think that fundamental understanding needs to go through, because often we are held into an artificial boundary, but that shouldn't limit the learning that should be shared across the group. Forking, at the end of the day, just complicates the learning across regions. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, I think you're totally right, but also I think the big difference when you touch that great book, by the way, Kai Fu Lee, AI Superpowers, for people I can recommend, like very well
that's
put.
the book I was reading as well.
I think what you're referring to, right? Yeah, that's made rounds. He's very eloquent, and I think one of the big differences is if you look at the kind of a market condition for AI deployment development, it's not the technicality of it; it's also the legal frameworks, like the amount and the detail of the granularity, sensitive boundaries of data that's very commonplace to collect in China. You can never get away with that in the US. And that's obviously in a way of innovation in a certain sense, but you could argue that's not necessarily a bad thing, because consumer needs a protection, and you kind of are looking at this potentially very powerful technology exploiting human behavior, and it's not a simple topic in itself, right? And I think it more segues into ethics of AI and any type of advanced analytical application, not just AI. So that becomes a bit kind of a murky water to me. But I think it's obvious that China's been kind of structurally putting investments into it. And if you look at it, as there's a lot of investment driven from the government top down, the way they've developed the startup ecosystem is just they are just what they've done within Shenzhen has been fantastic. And like you kind of are looking at 5 times the size of a Silicon Valley in one city, and they are doing it 5 times over in a big ACTs in China, right? So just the sheer scale is insane, and that's obviously a factor here as well. So for sure.
So true. And as I wanted to ask you, I guess as a follow up, and maybe I'll ask you, Pavel, first. When it comes to AI in martech and in ad tech, what's real and what's not? What's actually being implemented? Because obviously, as we were discussing, like the hype is big, and there's definitely a lot of activity in AI across the world, and having the US and China as two key centers that are propelling it forward. But for, I guess, in general within martech, what are you seeing as what's real, what's not, and how does a CDP provider play in that space?
Look, obviously this is something that's on my kind of table and in my conversation day in, day out, right? And I have to take a step away from the AI label, and I think I would maybe translate it into an algorithmic processing of data. So AI, if we talk about like a artificial intelligence or general artificial intelligence that's nowhere inside in near future, that's non-existent, right? But if we talk about application of smart algorithm into some type of a marketing activities, you're typically looking at predictions of the next behavior, whether that's being a recommendation, whether it's being content personalization. So that's obviously where this is very well applied, But then you look at disciplines like risk management in a finance, and you're looking at effectively a risk scoring algorithm having a couple hundred kind of levers that are being fed with different data points, and this is still a very, very basic kind of a business logic and decisioning. This is not an advanced analytics. So I think obviously we need in marketing, one thing you need is decisioning at scale. Like you can't be looking at even though we want ultimately a one-to-one marketing or this ultimate segment of one and tailored everything to this consumer, from the banners later to product eventually and the aftercare. That's the Shangri-La. So that's quite a ways away. But I think the only way to get to that is some type of automated algorithmic decisioning. So we are on the right way for sure. I think the hype is I wish I got $1 every time I hear that, because it's I not have to be working on my startup anymore, I think. But it's been a little bit tiring, and I think we are at the kind of just beyond the hype, and next year we're going to be hearing something about something else. But essentially, for me, where we play a role in that, when I think about it with CDP, look, we are not a company that focuses on building one algorithm for product recommendations. I think ultimately these algorithms are going to be fairly generic commodity. It's all going to be coming down to what data are you feeding to it. If you are doing recommendations based on your transactional history, that's relatively lean data set. But if you bring into it any other behavioral data from the consumer, what are they clicking on a newsletter? What are they clicking on in terms of banners? What are they looking at on the website? Which articles they are reading? Which products they are browsing? What have they canceled and returned in past? Like if you take all of this into the consideration and make it one big robust data set, I think implicitly the algorithms are going to be performing better. So that's the role we play in that. This synchronization, harmonization, enrichment of data, better taxonomy. That's where I see kind of our role in that. So taking all of the touch points from all of the corners of the business, bringing it into one place, feeding them into these algorithms. Now, wherever you build them in-house, buy them from Google or Microsoft, or have an external consultancy building them who are experts in that particular field, really whichever way you choose to go. But I think it all comes down to data. Better data sets, richer data sets are better than better algorithms. That's kind of my view on that.
That is so true, and that's fantastic. Data is what it all comes down to, and definitely that is what's powering and fueling the algorithms. But obviously, yeah. So thank you very much. And Vid, I'll ask you the same around AI. What do you see as what's real, what's hype, and what's being actually applied and implemented well today, and what would you like to see coming next?
Yeah, so I think for us, I have to say, a lot of what we have in actual executions in martech, I think AI is too early of a stage to say is effective, for us to scale it up and really get in with it, right? So I'll give you a very tangible example, right? So if you're talking about so Pavel mentioned CDP, right? The fundamental background of that is to connect and zero across devices and everything. If you reframe AI as machine learning and just make the domain a bit wider, that is a real place where companies are investing right now, whether in the form of a CDP or whether their own in-house algorithms or getting third-party vendors to work with us and really taking it through. There's a lot of work going on in attribution modeling too, especially with everything that's going on in the industry, the importance of more data science is going to be more and more critical for us. Until now, we had the luxury of connecting the whole identity through, a good, I wouldn't say a good solution, but a solution. Through third-party cookies. And now if they go away, the dependency on advanced analytics increases a lot. My question is really in terms of how effective that whole piece will be, especially at a time when effectiveness as a study is really going on, is going to be the key differentiator, right? So it's going to be a balance. We need more of that exploration into the brave frontiers, but at the same time, we will be kept in check with the ROI angle too. So it's going to be an interesting next few months and years. Yeah.
For sure. With a long list of things to do or ahead of us, right, for this entire industry, I'd like to bring the conversation back to talent. Vid, do you think there are enough marketing technology talent in the market today? And if there aren't, how are you addressing the current gaps?
So let me take the specific scope of APAC, right? I mean, Asia Pacific as a region. I'm pretty sure that the talent pool is on the very, very low side. It's really hard to get people with a firm grip on what's happening in the domain from a martech point of view, connect the dots to the marketing side and really do the full growth, right? So the reality is we need to work with either on-the-job training or industry certifications There are plenty of good ones. I mean, all the big companies have really good certifications to go after. That's the theory. I'm a firm believer in the practice. I think put it on, an actual practice situation with the needs of the company. I think that's the best way to mold talent. The only way we can do this is to get the people with the agility and flexibility to learn continuously, right? I don't think anybody who says, hey, I know everything about marketing technologies, I'll not be doing anything more for the rest of my life. I think it's a constantly evolving landscape, right? It's like this year, this is the major flavor. I thought when GDPR came out, that was like the huge thing. I'm like, what GDPR? That's de facto, right? I mean, there's a totally new thing, right? And I'm sure next year we'll throw out another curveball. So I think the important thing is to have the flexibility and agility in terms of, accepting all the changes that are coming ahead. It's always going to be, change is the only constant, right? So, we have to just go after it and adapt to it. But the fundamental thing is you need a good, base in your technical fundamentals. I think the technical fundamentals are not going to change, right? It's just how we execute, in the future will change constantly. So that, to me, is the most important thing. Have a bit of technical fundamentals, whatever platform, whatever it is, understand how things work today. Go deep in it, and then transfer your skills to any new thing that comes up next year, the following year, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Pavel, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I don't have much more to add. I totally agree with it here. I think it's the marketing technologist is the data scientist, the sexiest title of the century in the last 3 years that we've seen that's coming up here. So it's just a very rare breed. So you have someone who understands the discipline on marketing and is technical enough to understand systems, architecture as well, and the technical details of implementation of front-end tracking and identifiers and how DSPs and exchange work. There's a lot in that space. So it's not you're not gonna kill it in this space by knowing how Google Analytics work and being very, very good at that. Like it's just that silo skills don't exist anymore here. So I think that's something we need to be shining a little bit more light on. And obviously the industry has a responsibility for that. So driving this education as the vendors, as the specialists, as whether that's a technology or a service industries. I don't think in space that moves this fast, you can rely on the traditional education system to support your field. I just think that's naive, honestly. It moves way too fast, and education generally isn't something that's innovated at pace that moves with market. So I think it's honestly our responsibility, jointly.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And one of the things that I like about the online offerings in terms of education is that it allows people to keep up and invest in their education over time, but it also opens it up to so many more people. So then you have more of an equal footing for people, and it definitely has helped increase the amount of experience and the diversity within teams, and being able to help people come from all walks of life and be able to change careers to add value in our spaces. I know that we're coming up on time, and I'm going to be respectful of your time, but guys, this has been phenomenal. This has been absolutely fantastic. So Pavel and Vid, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, all your perspectives. It's been absolutely incredible. And Pat, always a pleasure to see you, to co-host with you. We're loving the partnership with She Loves Data, loving these episodes. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show and for coming to share all your knowledge with us. Thanks again. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Love the session. Thank you, guys.